Alright, so today I want to introduce you to the Leatherface ball python. It's a pretty interesting combination of jeans. It actually consists of 4 jeans: the pastel, the pinstripe, the cinnamon, and the Mojave. Essentially what it is, it's a lemon blast with the pastel and the pinstripe combined with a savannah, which is the cinnamon and the Mojave. And it's kind of interesting as far as the visual appearance. I say it kind of looks like a lemon blast as far as the pattern, but it kind of has this leathery kind of a look to it, kind of an interesting color. It almost looks like it's made of leather. I think that's why they call it the Leatherface. And kind of the interesting thing about the Leatherface, one of the things I like the best is when you take the Leatherface and you breed it to something else, you get a combination of dark jeans and lightning jeans. Sometimes you can actually make some really bright combinations, sometimes you can make some dark combinations. You can make pretty much a whole rainbow of different colors when you take the Leatherface and you breed it to something else. So today I want to jump over the internet and I want to show you how to make a Leatherface and the amazing potential of breeding the Leatherface to another ball python. Alright, so I'm going to jump over here on Morphmarket.com and I want to start with this snake right here. This is the Leatherface. This contains all 4 jeans: the pastel, the pinstripe, the cinnamon, and the Mojave. It's a pretty interesting combination of jeans, and it's probably one of the most unexpected combinations. I wouldn't expect all 4 jeans to end up with a snake that looks kind of like leather. It definitely has a leathery appearance to it, and it's pretty amazing if you breed this to something else what you can actually get out of the Leatherface as far as some of the offspring. So what I want to do is I want to show you the individual genes that make up the Leatherface, and then I want to show you breeding the Leatherface to a normal, some of the amazing combinations that you can get out of a snake that looks like this. You wouldn't imagine that you can actually get so many amazing snakes breeding this to something else. So the first gene I want to show you is the pastel. And let me tell you, if you've been in ball pythons even for a little while, you're probably familiar with the pastel. It's pretty much the #1 most popular gene in all of ball pythons. And essentially what the pastel does is it really brings in a lot of yellow. In most cases, although a lot of pastels can really vary, I've seen some kind of a rusty orange colored yellow as far as some of the pastels. Some of them can be kind of browned out and some of them can be super bright. It seems like there's different lines of pastel that can really vary from one to the other. And a lot of times the pastels can reduce the pattern a little bit. Sometimes you'll see the pattern is almost like a normal looking snake. Sometimes it can really reduce it almost into tiger stripes, like in this case. So here is another gene in the Leatherface, and that is the pinstripe. And I definitely have to say pinstripe is one of my favorite genes. Sometimes the pinstripes can be really super bright gold. I've actually produced some pinstripes here in my collection that almost have a metallic gold look to them. It's pretty amazing. And the pinstripes can vary a little bit. I'd say pinstripes are pretty much universal. Sometimes they can be a little bit golder, sometimes they can be a little bit browned out, but a lot of times you don't really find real extreme differences in the different versions of the pinstripe. So here's what happens if you take the pastel and you breed it into the pinstripe. You get the lemon blast, and the lemon blast is pretty amazing. And essentially what happens is it seems like when you mix pastel in with the pinstripe, it really makes the pattern explode. Sometimes you'll get a really, sometimes you get even more of a jumbled up pattern than this, and sometimes you get more of a solid line on top. Sometimes you see just a little bit of a jumbled pattern, and sometimes it's really extreme. And I'd say most cases the lemon blast can be pretty bright, especially if you compare this to the Leatherface. It's quite a big difference. So in order to get from the lemon blast over to the Leatherface, you have to actually add 2 genes, the cinnamon and the Mojave. And here is the cinnamon. And I'd say when it comes to cinnamon, cinnamons are probably one of the most variable genes in all of ball pythons. The cinnamons can really vary from a really dark looking snake, like almost like a dark normal, to kind of like a coppery colored snake. And this one is pretty dark. As a matter of fact, if you actually start with the 2 different cinnamons, like a dark one like this, it looks kind of like a normal, versus the reddish brown one, a lot of times that will significantly change the visual appearance of some of your offspring in some of your combinations that you make. It's pretty amazing the dramatic difference that the different versions of the cinnamon can make in your offspring. So here is the Mojave, another dark jean. The cinnamon and the Mojave are both dark, although I'd say the Mojave is kind of a double-edged sword because it can have a really dark background acting as a dark jean, but a lot of times the Mojaves can have really bright highlights all along the top of the snake. So it almost acts like a dark jean and a lightning jean in the same snake. And the Mojave is in the blue-eyed leucistic complex, so you kind of have to be careful if you're working with something in the blue-eyed leucistic. So for example, if you actually took the Leatherface and you bred it to another gene in the blue-eyed leucistic, such as Bamboo, the snake that I have around my neck at the beginning and the end of the videos, that is Bobby. He's a Bamboo. So if you actually took a Leatherface and you bred it to Bobby, the Bamboo, 25% of the time you'd get an all-white snake with blue eyes, and the all-white snake completely masks all the other genes in the snake. So you could actually have, you know, 5 or 6 or 7 genes underneath the blue-eyed leucistic, and they'd all be covered up. You just pretty much end up with an all-white snake. And one of the kind of the interesting thing about the Mojave is you can actually take the Mojave and breed it to other genes in the blue-eyed leucistic and get kind of purplish colored snakes. You don't always get the white snakes when using the Mojave. Sometimes you'll get like the purple passion, which is the Mojave and the Phantom, or you'll get like a Mystic Potion with the Mystic and the Mojave. You can get some interesting combinations with the Mojave. So if you actually take the Mojave and you work it into cinnamon, this is what you get. You get a Savannah, which is a really pretty amazing dark combination. So it's kind of like a double dark. It's like a double stacked dark on top of each other. And a lot of times with the cinnamon, when you work cinnamon in a lot of other combinations, a lot of times you get this streaking along the side. That's pretty much a dead giveaway that you have cinnamon in the combination. So if you actually take the Savannah and you work it into the Lemon Blast, you get the Leatherface. Here's another version of the Leatherface. You can definitely tell it has a lot of the kind of the pattern from the Lemon Blast, and for some reason you get that dark snake working into the Lemon Blast, and it kind of gives you this leathery appearance, which is kind of interesting. So I actually brought up the Genetic Wizard over here in the world of ball pythons, and it's this thing. Let me tell you, if you haven't been over here, you definitely should come over here and work with some of your genes and kind of figure out some of your breeding results. I've had a lot of people in a lot of my comments, they're like, hey, if I breed these two snakes together, what are the offspring? And let me tell you, you can actually plug all the genes in here for the male and the female. So over here, you plug in, for the male, actually plugged in the genes for the Leatherface, the cinnamon, the Mojave, the pastel, and the pinstripe. And if you leave the female blank before you hit calculate, it assumes that you're breeding it to just a normal wild type ball python with no genes in the snake. So if you actually do the breeding and hit calculate, you scroll down here, and these are all the results that you'll get breeding a Leatherface to a normal. And of course, you'll actually get the individual genes, the normal, the pastel, the pinstripe, the Mojave, the cinnamon, and then you start getting some of these really interesting combinations. And I wanted to show you a few of these. These are kind of interesting. I actually pulled up some pictures. This one is the Jigsaw. So the Jigsaw is the combination of the Mojave and the pinstripe. Pretty amazing combination when you work those two together. Essentially what you get is you get a snake that has a really strong line right down the top of the back. Almost looks like someone took a jigsaw and kind of cut a line right in the back of the snake and kind of give you this really ragged line down the top of the snake. And a lot of times in your jigsaws, you get this really wiped out pattern from the side of the snake. And you can actually take the jigsaw and add pastel. So you actually get this snake right here, which is a pretty wild combination. You get the Jigsaw Blast, which is, it's pretty amazing. You take that leathery looking snake and you start making a whole bunch of combinations like this. So if you come over here, these are all on the world of ball pythons. And if you scroll down to the bottom, it actually shows you all the genes in here. This one's actually the combination of the Mojave, the pastel, and the pinstripe. So the pinstripe and the Mojave is the Jigsaw. And then when you add the pastel, a lot of times when you have the pastel and the pinstripe, they call that the Blast. So a lot of times when you see Blast, you know you have the pastel and the pinstripe together in the combination. So here's another one that I thought was pretty interesting. You'll actually get a chainsaw. Some of these common names are pretty wild. And this one, I guess it's a little more ragged of a line than the jigsaw. You actually get the chainsaw. And the chainsaw, essentially what that is the Savannah, which is the combination of the two dark jeans, the cinnamon and the Mojave, with the addition of the pinstripe. And it seems like when you add pinstripe to a lot of combinations, you'll actually get a really strong stripe right down the top of the snake. As a matter of fact, some of my favorite pinstripe combinations are when you work pinstripe into the highways or the freeways, and you get some really strong stripes down the back of some crazy combos. I've actually seen some pinstripe freeways that were just out of this world. It's pretty amazing. So here's another combination you'll actually get from breeding the Leatherface to a normal. You'll actually get some Pastavis. And I've seen some of these that are really super bright, and some of them like this, they have a lot of high contrast, but they're not as bright as some. And let me tell you, I've seen some of these Pastavis and they are pretty amazing combinations. Sometimes they can be really super flashy. So here's another one you'll actually get breeding the Leatherface to a normal. You'll get a pewter, and the pewter is the combination of the cinnamon and the pastel. And these pewters, I'd say it's probably one of the most variable combinations that I've seen. I've seen some that are really kind of a rusty brown. I've seen some pewters that are like a metallic silver colored, almost like they're made of metal or something like that. Kind of crazy. And that really comes down to, again, the version of the cinnamon that you use in this combination. And sometimes if you actually buy a snake and it has cinnamon in it, sometimes you're kind of gambling, especially if you don't know of which version of cinnamon is that is actually in the combination until you breed it to something else. And then especially if you're making pewters, you can definitely tell which version of cinnamon, if it's kind of the reddish brown cinnamon or the dark normal looking cinnamon. So here's another Savannah I pulled up here over at the end. This one's kind of interesting because I actually had another version of the Savannah. So keep in mind the Savannah is the combination of the cinnamon and the Mojave. And I actually pulled this one up over here. Take a look at this. I thought this was really interesting that this version has a really streaked out sides, which you'll get a lot of times with the cinnamon, but a lot of times the cinnamon can be pretty variable. Sometimes you get really strong streaking on the sides. So this Savannah is the same exact genes as this one, and there's no streaking on the sides of this one, so it's pretty amazing from one Savannah to another. It's kind of the same thing with a lot of your cinnamon combinations. Sometimes it's kind of, I'd say, about 50-50 as far as when you get some of the really strong streaking on the side of the snake. And I actually wanted to pull up one Leatherface over here. This one's kind of interesting too, because this one, if you actually look at the pattern on this one, it is really kind of muted as far as the lemon blast type of pattern with the pastel and the pinstripe. A lot of times I'd say with most of these Leatherfaces, you can actually see the lemon blast pattern coming through, but on this specific example, you really can't see it. Kind of an interesting combination. It's amazing you get all those snakes breeding something like this just to a normal. Alright, so it is time for the question of the day. And Rich Corbett asks, is it better to have a spider female or a spider male? And that is a very good question. As a matter of fact, I was asking myself the same question when I was unloading a lot of my spider combinations over the last couple years. And when I first started out in ball pythons about 5 years ago, I didn't realize there was a problem with the spider gene. So if you actually take a spider and you breed it to another spider, 25% of the time you'll end up with the super spider, which is a lethal combination. And at the time when I first started in ball pythons, I'd say I'd probably had maybe 5 or 6 spider combinations, and I didn't have a whole lot of snakes. And then I quickly realized, hey, I can't breed these snakes together. Or if I actually did breed them together, pretty much what I'd be doing is 25% of the time, 1 out of 4 eggs would pretty much be a dud, and I'd have to throw out 25% of all my ball python eggs. I was like, all right, I need to change something up. And I decided, all right, I'm going to unload all my spiders except one. I want to keep the gene because spider is really amazing in combinations. It can make some of the most breathtaking combinations. And I decided to keep one snake, and it was kind of, you know, at the time I was like, all right, should I keep a male or a female? And I actually kept my female just because it's one of the most beautiful snakes in my entire collection. It's actually a pastel spider desert ghost, a really amazing combination. And I'd probably made a mistake keeping the female because, you know, in the future, if I decide to actually get out of the spider gene, the problem problem is if I have a really big female, the females are the bread and butter as far as the ball pythons. Those are the ones that lay the eggs, of course, and that's where you get, you know, the money coming in to support your breeding business. And if you actually get rid of one of your big females, essentially what you'd have to do is you'd have to find another smaller female and grow it up. And sometimes it'll take 2 or 3 years, or as a matter of fact, I'm on my 4th year on this crazy spider combination female that I have, and hopefully she'll lay eggs here in the 4th year. I actually bred her on year 2 and year 3, and she didn't give me any eggs, so sometimes it can be a little bit frustrating. But on the flip side, if I actually had the spider gene in the male and decided, all right, I'm going to completely get out of the spider gene, I could replace that male with another male, even if it was a hatchling. Usually males mature in about a year to a year and a half, so I could quickly replace that male. But kind of on the flip side of that too, if you actually, you know, a lot of times here in my collection what I'll do is I'll take one male and I'll breed it to multiple females, sometimes 3 to 4 females per one male. So pretty much what I do is if I had spider here in my collection and had it in a male, I would pretty much just breed that one male to one female, because I don't really want to produce that many spiders here in my collection. So I'd say I'd probably lean towards a male if I was buying a brand new snake and looking at the spider gene, because I could easily replace it a lot easier than replacing a female, especially if that female is like 7 or 8 years old and lays really big clutches of eggs, like 10 or 15 eggs at a time. And let me tell you, sometimes it's hard to let those females go. So that is pretty much it. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next video.
Bye.